Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard. And boy, this is going to be a fun introduction for me and probably painful for my guest. But I've got Noel David Taylor here. Hey, Noel.
Hello.
How do I share the background? It was in 2019 that Noel's film, Man Under Table, I'm saying the short version. I guess I should say the long version. But Man Under Table was at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019. And I fucking loved it. And Noel knows that. And I think for about, I don't know how long we emailed back and forth about recording this podcast. But dear podcast listener, I just have to tell you that you're listening to two people who have been talking to each other for like 2 years, I think.
Yep, that sounds right.
So I am champing at the bit to hear Noel's whole story. And by the way, I think I know Man Under Table is watchable on Amazon Prime Video. Are there other places people can watch it?
Yeah, so the main distributor that picked it up is called Arrow. They're like a UK-based company, Arrow Video. They have it on their site, which is a really cool, like, sort of more horror genre type stuff, but like just really weird, esoteric stuff. They're a really cool service. I think they have like a free trial too.
Right. So that's like, I Googled it real fast. So that's arrow-player.com is where people go. And Arrow is ARROW. It's so funny. Here in LA, there's the Arrow Theater that's AERO. And that's where my brain went. So.
No, I know.
Maybe I'm the only one who pictured the wrong word for arrow. Who knew that those were the same word? I didn't realize that time. But that is where people should go to see Man Under Table, which I could not recommend more. If you like indie film and you're into, I didn't even say it's a feature, huh? It's a feature film, man, and it is so good.
Thank you.
And I believe I don't know which of us was more embarrassed by our Q&A at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019.
I think we could call it even. I think we could say we both won.
Even? Yeah. I will never forget, and I'll just confess this right off the bat, that I believe I started your Q&A by saying, this is such a special film. And I looked over at you and I go, and I guess that means you're a special person.
I'll take it.
I'm a huge fan of indie film. I love films where people are just letting themselves be creative and not following the rules and just taking on the challenge of making a feature. If you can't have extras, use cardboard cutouts. If you can't do this, you do that. And I just think Man Under Table, what can I say? I was your target audience. Love the film. As you know, I've shown it to friends and my friends love it. So I'm not alone in this.
Yeah, it means a lot. I think that you were the first person to really pour in kind words and champion this movie. And it was, at a time where I really needed it. And it was, just kind of coming out of a lot of isolation and putting this movie together when I sent it over. And it was just, it really was an uplifting experience to get to share that with you and be in that theater. And it's a ridiculous film.
I suppose, but I don't know. That is a fair comment. But then again, this planet needs ridiculous films.
I agree.
And we need people who are willing to. I mean, my God, you absolutely do hang yourself out there. I guess I should mention that you wrote and directed it. You probably did way more than that. You are the lead actor in it. I believe you probably heard from some of our jury members, right? Like we had a jury member, people based in Manchester, England, who were sending an email saying, I love it. And the thing I love best is Noel's performance.
That's great. Yeah, I do remember that. It's just the amount of kind words and people telling me, the specific things they enjoyed about it and absorbing the specific little jokes and it's pretty overwhelming. Like, yeah, it's been amazing to get, that attention back from it. It's such a, I mean, like you said, like, yeah, I wrote and directed and starred in it. It's a movie that I made after sort of a lot of bad experiences in indie film and, bad people in the indie film world. And the energy I was in prior to making this film was the sort of egotistical, petty tyrant type people that are just so self-obsessed that they, use people for their projects and, typical Hollywood nonsense. But to make a film where I was just sort of asking people to volunteer their time and do whatever they wanted with it and make it a little more collaborative and fun and just not take it seriously while also kind of poking fun at that world. It was a lot of work because I was just sort of doing it 100% by myself for the most part. And, doing in these small chunks so it was doable. And I think a lot of it I shot in my apartment. I just, redressed my apartment to be these weird sets. And yeah, I mean, I don't know where I was going.
I'll jump in and add that, it must have been, it is absurdist and expressionistic, but it's also very personal. And like I'm just going to think I'll throw out the word brave or courageous that it's most people. Well, I think a lot of people, when they think about like bearing their soul on screen, like most aren't going to do it. And I feel like you were willing to.
Yeah. Well, there's not much left of it. So I figure I might as well put it out there. Yeah. If you're not interested in telling the stories that hurt you, then what's the point?
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, we're talking about Man Under Table a lot, which is, of course, part of this podcast. But of course, I'm curious about where you come from and how you got into the arts. Besides being a multi-hyphenate for this one, I don't know why I have the impression of you as primarily a writer. Oh, I know why. It's because your character in the film is a writer.
He never actually writes anything, though, if you notice.
He doesn't, but he does. Oh, God. But he sits in a room with an older guy and says something along the lines of, well, I would be interested in this if I was getting paid. Something along those lines. I'm interested in being paid. I'm not interested in this project, but I'm certainly interested in the check involved.
Yeah, who hasn't been there?
That was talk about honesty. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I think I would agree, especially these days. I would primarily consider myself a writer. I enjoy all aspects of filmmaking, and I think because of you mentioned like how I got started or whatever. When I was a kid, I just absorbed so much, so much media, so much television and movies from my parents, my mom. We grew up in England, and I grew up with a lot of English television and English comedy, and I really just like the 80s, 90s BBC comedies that are like very special to me. They have an approachability that, and I think they still kind of do. I think the charm of a lot of BBC stuff is they're not pretentious or extra in that sense that if you watch something on network or whatever here, you might think, I can't do that. That's a $10 million endeavor. There's no way I can do that. And I feel like the attitude more in England was, you could do this, or you feel like you could. And that always sort of influenced me. And as a kid, I just started, I begged my parents for a camera. And then I finally got one when I think I was 12. And I just, me and my friends made little stupid videos like you do. And part of doing that is you have to do everything because, you know, it's just you and a camera. And I don't think that mentality really ever left. So, a lot of times it's like, I know a lot of people, and myself included, we sit around with our PDFs and we want to do something with them, but it would take time and money and effort and a million people. But it's not, it doesn't have to be that way. You can do something if you have some small means. So yeah, I think that was obviously like Man Under Table, and a lot of little things I do are just born of that. Do what you can and work that into the story or the vibe somehow.
Yeah, I mean, wow, there's a lot to unpack there, to be honest. First of all,
I went on a bit of a ramble.
No, that's great, and it's so interesting. So you grew up in England, which already
Had too much coffee.
makes you more interesting than most people I talk to. No, that's not fair. But I kind of want to add what you said about British comedy. I want to pile on that. Right, England in the 70s and then 80s on, like, okay, so American comedy has this ego and people are trying to act cool, and like, I can't, like, even an underdog in quotes like Chandler on Friends is clearly trying to act like a cool stud, blah, 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 blah. Whereas the British knew that they were once an empire and they were now an island off the coast of France, basically.
Definitely.
But like, England had accepted its decreased role in the world, and there's so little ego in British comedy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I totally get why someone who also, what can I say? I think there's a refreshing lack of ego in your film. So kind of putting that together.
Yeah. It's a special, I mean, yeah, I feel like I could go on and on about BBC and British comedies, especially of that era. I am.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit that actually I had a fun Q&A at the film festival just last month where this really funny short, he's like, yeah, actually we got picked up by a British site. I'm like, oh, well, the British are so much funnier than us. That's a big deal.
It's true.
It feels that way. I don't mean to be an America hater, but what can I say? British comedy. What are you going to do?
They just make it so easy, don't they?
They make it, and certainly, I mean, look, I referred to the absurdist and artsy elements of your work, and I mean, Monty Python half the time is performance art.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it is definitely art.
It is, and so well thought out. So you got that camera at 12, and I assume, and just started having fun with friends with it. Were you like a short story writer and stuff too, like before that?
Yeah. I think I grew up with comic books and just any means of escapism, and a lot of TV. I was raised by TV, and I turned out TV. So I definitely wrote a lot in school and stuff. I remember getting in trouble sometimes because of writing things that were too like gory or adult, and the teachers sending me to the counselor. I always liked writing, and then that just sort of kind of grew at the same time, I guess, as fiddling around with film and video, always video. And yeah.
And I mean, were there horror influences too? It sounds like if you were writing stuff that got a little edgy and got you in a little bit of trouble, were you just a big consumer of lots of genres?
I loved everything, but yeah, when I was a kid, I think that's like a very typical thing for especially teenage kids to absorb, especially those cheesy 80s horrors that were in the video store at the time. I used to go with my parents, and they'd let me pick one of the cheaper movies, and I'd get like a 99-cent April Fool's Day or something, you know. I loved horror when I was a kid. It's not really my genre now. I don't really care for it, but I just dug into it. I saw every, you know, I was obsessed with Carpenter and just any, like, the more off-brand, the more cheap and gory and silly. Yeah, I love that stuff. I never really tried to go that direction, even as a kid, with the silly little films. But yeah, I did love horror a lot.
You know, it's funny that of all the films for you to throw out there, you named April Fool's Day, which I saw in high school, and like I was not a horror fan back then.
Yeah,
and that was the one film that I thought was so smart and hilarious.
It was really good.
It was outstanding. So it's kind of funny to me that you named the one horror film that I enjoyed in high school. I didn't like any horror in high school. Now I've got a 15-year-old and all she wants to do is watch horror. And so I watched horror with her. And I've actually, during COVID, we were locked. I was like, okay, we can watch a horror movie every Friday night and every Saturday night. So we just, and through beating myself over the head with horror film after horror film, I actually have learned to appreciate it.
Oh yeah, there's definitely some amazing stuff out there. It's just, you know, it's a very saturated place right now.
Yeah. It's too naturally successful for its own good, right? Yeah. There's no real. Yeah. Thankfully, some people try to take it somewhere special and somewhere interesting. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you just do a generic horror film, you can probably get it released. Maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's all I hear. Heck, with the Discover Indie Film stuff, with the TV series that was born out of the podcast, when Amazon shifted us from free to pay, like I reached out to some of the AVOD, the people that advertise. They're like, "Oh, you got a TV series? How much of it is horror?" And I was like, "These are indie films from the festival circuit, so like 1 out of 20, maybe."
You gotta love how the brain of the corporate entity works.
Yeah, when you just tell them I have a TV series that's an anthology of short films, like, oh great, is it all horror? And it's like,
is it horror?
No, they're good films. Which is not to say there's not great horror at the festival.
No, there's obviously, yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff. Lots of people and creative. But anyhow, all right, so back to you. So when high school and college and university come around, did you stay on this focus or did you study other things?
Yeah, I think, you know, high school was definitely when, you know, I actually had this really, if I can go on a tangent, I had this incredible experience that happened. I must have been 14, 15. I'm not sure. But I used to go to this in the Bay Area. There was a punk club out in Oakland. And we used to go there, you know, just to see music. But a friend of mine who was an older kid, I think he was like friends with my sisters who were 4 years older than me. He was like, "Oh, you make movies. Like, can I see some of them? We're doing a local, you know, little showing of indie, you know," and this like really consider the word indie here. And we showed him all the stupid skits we had been making, and he liked one of them, and he put it on it at the Gilman, is what the place was called, 925 Gilman, I think. I can't remember what they, anyway. Put the movie on. This guy who, you know, in my teenage head was an adult, was probably 21, came up to me and said, you know, "Hi, saw your movie. I work at a tech company and we have all this gear. Do you want a camera? Like, I'll give you," it was a Canon GL2, which if people remember that camera, it was like the first sort of prosumer mini DV camera. And it was completely unattainable for me. It was probably a $3,000 camera or something when it came out in, you know, 2000 or whatever this is, 1999. Yeah, just, "Hi, I've never met you. Do you want this expensive camera?" And met up with him in Oakland. It felt very weird. Gave me a very expensive camera because he just worked for a big company and was a cool guy, and was like, take it for a year. If I, need it back, I'll let you know. And so we made hundreds of dumb videos with this camera. I mean, we worked it to the bone, and it was a very just, manna from heaven moment.
That's amazing. And okay, so wait, let me try to be a proper interviewer. So you shifted from the UK to the Bay Area.
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry. Yes, my dad was a computer programmer, so he moved over. We moved us all over to do that, to type on computers.
Right. And how old?
I was originally maybe 10 when we kind of shifted back and forth. My parents, being very good with money, just kind of lost money in one country and moved back to another. We did that dance for a long time. But yeah, ended up in the Bay Area, and yeah.
Okay, cool. It's a dumb question, but do you slide into a British accent if you're around British people?
Absolutely. Yeah. If I'm there for long enough, I'll do it. And sometimes just to stop being spoken to, because, everybody is very, excited to, not always, that's obviously a silly cliche, but when I'm in Leeds or somewhere northern, they might ask why we're back. Get that a lot.
For sure. Like, oh, you sound like an American, and all of a sudden you don't know if it's going to go good or bad, actually, I bet.
Exactly.
So you slip back in. But I guess, because needless to say, you certainly don't sound like someone who spent the first 10 years in England.
No. I like to say I got the accent beat out of me. I had a pretty rough experience in middle school and high school. Actually ended up dropping out of high school because of just, I'm just a very frail British boy, and it doesn't bode well for American high schools.
Oh shit. So rampant bullying?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just because you had this British and slightly artistic vibe.
Yeah, and I certainly wasn't myself any favors. I was, I was a little shit starter for sure.
Well, that's good. At least, right? Because you would. Well, God, you grew up on British comedy, BBC comedy, so yeah, that's a sharp tongue comes with that. Yeah. All right, so you're in the Bay Area, and yeah, so cool. So some dude actually goes, "We've got these great equipment sitting around not getting used, so I'm just going to let you use it," which blows me away.
Yep.
So were you
amazing.
editing in camera, or were you did you figure out how to, were you cutting on, whether it was Windows Movie Maker or iMovie or something?
Yeah. So at the beginning of that stuff, I was doing VHS to VHS. Originally I had a high 8, a little 8mm camcorder, or a Sony Handycam. And I was editing that VCR to VCR. And when I first got the GL2, I kind of was trying to still do that, which is ridiculous. And then I think my friend Jake at the time, he got this insane, thing, like a graphics card installed in his computer. I think his parents got him this, so you could put was it FireWire back then?
Yeah, there was the FireWire. FireWire was how you connected.
Yeah. And so he got some janky program, which I can't remember what it was called, but it's imagine the first iteration of iMovie, but worse.
Sure. Just a really cheap consumer level offline editing program.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. And frames were constantly dropped and nothing worked, and every file got corroded. But it was fun. And it had the trappings of Premiere, and gave me that, the education in editing that I needed. So
Right, excellent. So you were really just making films at that point.
yeah, I remember. So I did about a year and a half of high school. Couldn't really hack it. So I took the test and got out of there, and really just at that point had made my mind up that I wanted to make films, and was just pressing as hard as I could into that world. And I remember I learned how to use like Flash and a lot of like the early web design tools in an attempt to, there was a way you could back then, you could take a very, very, very low resolution video and convert each frame into a web playable thing. I mean, it looked like hell, but we would make these very short 1-2 minute videos and compress the hell out of them. And we would have to do this insane jerry rigging of linking to Angel Fire and linking to whatever else and all these free sites so that we could get enough space and then, do it in this. I can't even really remember how we did it, but we managed to get some videos online. This is like way before, YouTube and whatnot. So this was like the only way we could think to do it. And so we made these little 1-2 minute videos and put them on a really terrible website. And so that was like a huge force that I put my energy into, which, obviously a massive waste of time, but it was informative. Yeah.
Yeah, I might debate you on the waste of time thing, but you got to have interests, right?
Yeah, I was so, it's funny how smart I used to be. I don't know what happened. Like I in high school, we used to like have to build our own computer to get this stuff done. And we none of us had $1 between us. So it would be, where can we find this piece? Where can we find this piece? And it's fun to think about. Yeah. I would never do that today. I'd be too lazy. I'd just be like, it sounds hard.
You and me both. I actually built my own PC back in the day. Like I was like, wow, look at the pricing of if I get all the parts and put it together, I get like twice the computer for the price.
It was so much cheaper. And you'd go to in the Bay Area, we had Fry's. I think they used to have Fry's in LA too. And you'd go to the sales and just wait for whatever part you needed to go on sale.
Yeah, for sure. You would. Well, that's cool. And you were putting them, and you found a way to sort of put it online. So YouTube was actually designed with people like you in mind, I think. Right? The early years.
Absolutely. I can remember the day I found out about YouTube. I was taking an After Effects class at DBC, and my teacher made us all pull it up on the computers. And everybody was, not paying attention and being typical college students. And I was a bit younger than most people in the class, but they were still all pretty young, Anyway, I think it's 2005, maybe. Yeah, and I stopped listening to whatever he was saying once I brought that website up. This was the site I was waiting for. It was totally game changing. You could just put videos. You didn't have to compress them or put them into Flash or Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, oh my God, Flash. Yeah, you brought up Flash before. So wait, I'm failing on getting your chronology. So you did the GED kind of vibe and got the hell out of high school.
Yeah.
And then you were very into film, and I assume also at that point, were you screenwriting? Did you learn like screenplay format on your own, and were you writing that way? Or
I really didn't. I think at that point I was just doing that thing that I think a lot of people do when they start out, with just sort of writing everything either physically or, just in a Word document. It wasn't for a few years that I used to read a lot of scripts, but I think it was just intimidating for some reason. I was so intimidated by the formatting, which is funny because now I have a hard time writing outside of that format. It's such an easy, bare bones, succinct format in my mind. But yeah, I avoided it for a while. I went straight to college because I got really lucky. I got, I applied for a lot of grants and managed to get them. And I got to, take all these multimedia courses at DVC, which was all I really cared about. I just wanted to learn, how to use the tech. And back then it was a lot of physical stuff. Like there was a class on editing that had, the old decks, the editing decks with the knobs and wheels and stuff, and learned all that stuff. That was what I really wanted to learn, but I ended up taking all the, I think After Effects and Premiere were still pretty new programs, but they had classes on them. Took all those. It was all I really wanted to do was absorb that stuff. And then of course, to get a degree, you have to take a bunch of other classes, which I did and ended up enjoying. But
actually, you've named DVC twice. What college is that?
Oh, yes, sorry, Diablo Valley College, and I think it's in Concord, California. It's a great school.
So a NorCal college. And
this is a little community college that happened to be by my house.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And they had, actually you were mentioning, I had something to help clarify, but I lost it because I'm old and I don't remember things.
Oh, man.
I was actually going to say that. Yeah. Cause I remember when Premiere first hit, and this might've been in that era, Premiere was the embarrassingly bad consumer editing program.
Yep. So that's why the community college had it.
Yeah.
Taught it.
Of course. But it was the professional thing was Avid, which required like $10,000 worth of hardware.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody could touch that. So, but Premiere, it was buggy up until a few years ago, honestly. But I still use it and I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. And After Effects is a powerful tool.
I loved After Effects when I was a kid. Now it's the bane of my existence, but I loved it back then. Oh yeah.
Right, so at DVC, you did the general education stuff you had to do, but were you also were there classes where you actually got to like make films or make shorts?
Yeah. There were a few. I think this must, and now I'm putting the pieces together as I'm saying it. This must have shaped something of realizing I was a bit of an outsider because, every time I'd show a short in any of those classes, the entire college career, no, of course nobody liked them. Everybody had a lot of comments, or they didn't have any comments at all because this is just unwatchable. And
right, so you were embracing your whatever we want to call it. I think did you earlier just call it weird?
Yeah, definitely weird. But sitting through a college short film entry level short film class is not easy. I have a lot of respect for the teachers that sit through that. It's fairly difficult. But yeah, I was just doing silly comedy stuff. And of course, when you're a teenager, you think that you have a lot of really cool ideas. You think that you are political and interesting and, subversive, and you're not.
Well, you are. I think you probably are. In fact, I think I kind of glorify that era. I think that because that's like you don't even know the rules, so you just break a lot of rules without realizing that you're not supposed to do what you're doing.
Yeah, I do think that's really important. I do sometimes think that there is way too much emphasis on, like, I think that expression, know the rules so you can break them. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think you only get one chance in your life to not know how to do something. And you should embrace that and figure out what that means and what you can create from that experience.
Yeah. And at DVC, there wasn't anybody there who got it. Was there like, I would have thought like, in a classroom of whatever, 25, 30 people, there'd be one person who would come over and go, man, I thought your film was really cool.
I think my After Effects teacher, he was a guy who liked very weird stuff, and he was a fun, interesting guy who always sort of chuckled at my stuff. But I think as a whole, I feel like just a weighted tiredness and sense of get me the hell out of here kind of absorbed most of my
For sure. Well, I can imagine, that you didn't exactly feel like that was the environment for you. I mean, you selected it because it was a nearby college, right? So
yeah. And again, it's like I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. You hope every time you go into an endeavor like that, you hope that you dream that there's going to be 10 people in the class that are all on your, sorry, I'm a little sick, that are all on your page and they all want to do the thing you want to do, and you get in this group and then it's amazing. And then you grow into this collective. And the reality is it's a disparate ensemble of people that have nothing in common with you, and you
and are taking the class for the opposite reason you're taking it.
Absolutely. They want to make whatever the movie is that is big right now, that's the one they want to make. They want to make the Quentin Tarantino movie, and that's what they're going to try to make.
Yeah, and before that, they thought they were going to be people were like, I'm going to be the next Spielberg. I'm going to be the next this. I'm going to be the next that. And it's like, who are you?
Right.
And the world already has a Spielberg, believe it or not. So I'm not sure that chair is empty.
Yeah. So that never really panned out. I kind of, I feel like I pushed myself through college because it was the thing you're supposed to do. But education as a whole, honestly,
that's probably the majority of people go to college, because they're not aware of any other option.
Yeah.
And actually, for most parents, I'm not sure there is another option.
No, totally. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So when you get out of there, what do you do next?
I just, I think high school kind of started a pretty thick and oppressive cloud of depression for me, and that stuck around for a while. And I think my 20s were just as bad, and it was really hard to stay motivated. Film has always been in creativity, and I used to paint a lot. I actually started going to school as an art major, oil painting, but those are escapes, and those are things that can be a beacon for sanity. But I think I floated around for a while, not knowing what to do. I mean, continuing college, I wanted to go to an art college, but I couldn't afford it. I didn't even really think I was going to be able to get into a regular university because of finances. I managed to transfer to a university with grants and loans and such. But
were you in that shitty position where your parents do just okay enough to keep you from getting the real aid, but then not well enough to cover tuition?
Well, I think,
or I'm just actually, I don't know why I asked that. That's personal anyway.
We floated around a lot, like if you know anything about what computer programmers were sort of doing, that, the 90s sort of started a outsourcing discourse that, became that basically it's just that was a very tumultuous field. And that was sort of the only income my parents had. And so we had some dark dips in that. So I think,
people don't associate coders and programmers with it. But yeah, if you were basically an independent contractor, it was kind of a gypsy life.
Yes, it was. So we moved around a lot. And I think, I don't know. I wonder if like technically being immigrant status too probably made things more difficult to get, because you have to get a work visa. My parents weren't citizens until way later. But anyway, yeah, I did manage to like the community college. We were in a pretty messy place financially, so that was all paid for, it felt really empowering and incredible at the time, because I didn't know what the hell else to do, and all I cared about was film. And I got to have some small resources given to me. That paired with that guy who gave us that camera, he just disappeared. And he originally was like, take it for a few months or a year or whatever. He disappeared for like 3 years, and then resurfaced, and we were sure we were out of the woods and we got to keep this camera. And he's like, yeah, I'm leaving my job. I need the camera back.
Wow, amazing that he was able to get a whole. What a risk he took! Because
I know,
if you had moved, that was back when. Well, maybe it wasn't. I come from the era, right? I'm older, so like you would have a landline, and when you moved, no one could call you again. Like this whole thing of your phone number not changing because you have a mobile number. Like,
you know what it was? It was, we lived in such a small town that I think he literally would just reached out to a friend that we knew each other from that event I was talking about, and was like, yo, like, I need the camera back. Where's the dumb kid that I gave it to? And he found me at the coffee shop,
Gotcha. So we found you, and the three years of that camera came to a close.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, it was enough time to make a bunch of stuff and learn a lot. I think the best way you can learn it, just by doing it.
Yeah, for sure. So then you is it time, when do you head down to Southern California?
Not for a while. I moved up to Portland to go to school. Just really did a lot of floating. My parents, again, I think they moved right when I started at the community college, and sort of expected me obviously to move with them. I was 16, I think. And I was like, I'm not doing it anymore. I can't do any more big moves. Like, I'm staying here. And I managed to get up with a couple of, like, my girlfriend at the time and an older friend, that a cheap apartment out in Lafayette. And it was a really rough time. I had a really hard time figuring out how to be a somewhat functioning human being. But I just didn't want to move again. And, but eventually, years of just sort of floating around back and forth from Oregon to the Bay Area, I decided to do school in Portland, because I got some grants and stuck around there for a while, and then lived in Portland for, I don't know, a minute, and just had to do it. I'd gone as far as I could. I had done a bunch of acting. I had a decent agent in Portland, but it's a smaller city. And I think I was, I don't know, late 20s, I guess.
Right. So after you leave DVC, at some point you end up in Portland, and you did pursue some acting there?
Yeah. I did. I started doing acting in the Bay Area, which went fairly okay because there was some stuff happening there. But obviously, starting out, you just and I had just had crazy anxiety. So everything was really overwhelming for me, and this is like the days of like MapQuest. You like print the MapQuest out and then try to find your way to some place out in the middle of San Francisco, and it was a lot, and it was difficult. But anyway, I did a few things there, so I had managed to make a very small resume, and that was I was able to sort of roll that into some work important. And yeah, and I just did everything. I just said yes to everything and tried to do as much as I could, and then just got tired of waiting around for like the one project that rolls through, and moved to LA. And that was also completely insane, tumultuous experience. But after you get your legs, I think LA is a really great and kind of it's hard like any city, but I think there's something special and inviting about it. There's something in its. Everybody knows it's like it's like New York and LA. Everybody knows it's a hard city, so everybody's, I feel like, a little kinder to you, knowing that, in a way.
That's good to hear. I'm glad. I mean, weirdly, I'm a third generation LA native, so, and no one in my family had anything to do with the industry, so it's always nice to hear that people get greeted nicely here too.
I mean, I love LA. I have a bad thing to say about it, honestly, but obviously it's not a shared thought with most people.
I suppose. Oh, cool. So, and you came down just, by the way, I mean, for someone who dealt with depression and such, you've done some, in my opinion, some pretty impressive moves, whether it was not moving with family or, choosing to move here, or, that's some courageous shit.
Yeah, it's funny. I nearly, obviously, in my own mind, I just always felt like I was three steps behind and beat myself up a lot about everything I did. And yeah, thank you. It's like maybe the first time I can sort of look back and go, yeah, that's kind of wild. Like moving out at 17 or whatever I was, and yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, it shows a lot more courage than a lot of people I know. Well, so, and the move to LA, was it, and I'm using my hands on a podcast to talk, but was it everything, or was there a focus on acting or writing or something, or filmmaking, or was it just in general, like, I'm sort of doing some stuff in Portland, and this pond is way too tiny, so I'm going to go to the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, that was the idea. And of course, these things take time. And like when I first got down there, I want to say the first year or so, I was just doing that cliched thing of canvassing every agency. You go to what is the Samuel French bookstore, and you get the list of agents, and you just
there's a freaking printed book.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. And I remember even just finding out about that book, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds incredible. Because you type in agents in LA on your computer, and you might as well just kill yourself, because it's impossible. But yeah,
and that pulled you into a bookstore where they have like screenplays,
yes,
on shelves.
Yes, I mean, obviously an amazing staple, that place. And you could just get lost in there for days. And I think at that time, I was definitely writing a lot. Um, yeah, and I just blanketed, like I said, I just blanketed for agents, and I found an acting agent, and I convinced myself that acting was the way to do that at the time, and yeah, and just sort of started that auditioning lifestyle. That yeah.
Interesting. See that you completely surprised me with that. I didn't expect to hear that you did that. So, and you just figured, you know what, I'll start acting because, where do you start with your own screenplay, I guess? Like,
Right. Right. I was always very realistic that I wasn't gonna, run into Harvey Keitel at the gym and give him my script, because that just seems so insane. And I just figured try to get some, not even like room in the industry, just some actual finances, uh, so that I could start doing my own stuff. And yeah.
and so you hit the oh my God, talk about a merciless I don't even know what adjectives to use. I always felt, and I never tried to act and I've never auditioned, but I've been on the other side of the table for auditions.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine a more unpleasant process
It's a
for human
nightmare.
beings to go through than, I mean, it's like a job interview where you have a light shined on you and a little video
Yeah.
camera pointed at you, and you're just, I mean,
And
the audition process, I have nothing but empathy for actors.
oh,
It's
it's horrid.
amazing to me people survive it.
It's horrid. And it's just for me, the way that I sort of started making films, it was always like, we do a quick rehearsal or whatever, or like our, even from just being a kid and doing the silly little 8 millimeter films and stuff, you do the thing. You wouldn't really care. You just be like, okay, yeah, he goes over here, he picks up, do the blocking. Okay, cool, whatever. And then once you start recording, once that, red light is on, you know that it counts. So you start to do it right. So auditioning was always locked into my mind as this isn't real. This doesn't count. There's no, I'm not in the set. I don't, how am I don't know. So I feel like I'm pretty bad in general at auditioning, uh, because it doesn't light a fire under me. It's not fun. Acting is. There's something that doesn't feel like it counts or something. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I think it makes perfect sense. And yeah, I mean, it's why, whew, well, anyway, so you dealt with that, and were you writing all the time too? Or sort
Yeah.
of,
Yeah. Yeah. Just, just trying to, I feel like there's just a lot of just trying to get by. So yeah, just like a lot of odd jobs. And
yeah, thankfully there's a lot of those in a city this big,
absolutely.
but it's not like it's, by the way, talk about persistence. I mean, I think we all know the kind of jobs you get when you're a young person in a new city, and to be able to do that and then go home and be creative on your own time instead of
Yeah.
just sit down and veg for a minute because it's
And
the
yeah. And the horrible, horrible word networking. That's where it really gets you. You gotta have a job. You have to work on your own stuff, and then you have to meet people. Ugh. It's a lot of work.
I know. And I always, whenever, I don't know, maybe it was just because I have a quitter deep down inside my heart, but I was like, do you really think you can meet somebody at a bar or a party who's going to turn around and say, let's work together? I mean,
Oh, I mean that I completely. That was like my mindset from day one. I feel like I've always. I mean, I think I'm a realist, but when you have pretty debilitating depression issues, like all those things are turned up. Like, of course, it's completely unrealistic that you're going to walk into a bar and someone's going to write you a check, but it's not insane. It's not completely out of this world. And when you can't even, you know, pick up on those small trace hopes, like, you know, it's not putting yourself in a good place. Like I definitely spent a lot of my life hiding in my room, and that's just obviously nobody's, you know, gonna knock on the door.
Totally true. Totally true. And these things are in Man Under Table for sure. I
Oh,
think
sure.
the watching your character Guy make his networking efforts, I obviously see where it comes from.
Yeah. Oh, and you know, I think a lot of, especially in my early 20s and 20s in general, I was so cantankerous. You know, I think there's a lot of that in Guy too. So no, even if somebody were to talk to me, I would probably scare them off by being an asshole. So, you know, I'm my own worst enemy.
Which is interesting to me because I admit, like, one of the things, believe it or not, I think what grabbed me right off the bat with your film was your character in that first scene in that bathroom when someone throws a completely worthless idea for a film at him, and instead of shitting on it, he goes, "Oh, that's good."
Yeah.
And his and you can tell he's actually thinking that might sell or whatever. I just think that level of honesty in there is kind of what, like, that hooks me right off the bat.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
hard for me
I
to
mean, there is a
imagine you being
level
the
of,
cantankerous asshole in a Silver Lake bar around people who are pretending that they're more important.
yeah.
Boy, I just brought a
No,
lot. I just brought a
I
lot
feel
of
like I've
baggage
changed.
to that sentence.
Oh man. I mean, let's do it. I mean, you know, I feel like I've changed a lot, and that that version of me doesn't really exist anymore. But I think it's worthy of talking about and making fun of and bringing light to. But yeah, I think that's a funny comment about, you know, I can't remember what the birth of that joke was of him like thinking some inane idea is good, but I think, you know, maybe just living in the cesspool of creatives, your brain starts to warp, and you go, like you said, like, yeah, like you could sell that is good, but
For
it's not.
sure. And I mean, whatever, I'll bear a little bit of my soul and add that. And I was obviously cantankerous and unpleasant in my own way, but when you first start meeting people who also have creative aspirations, I made the mistake of assuming other people were talented, and
Yep.
and everyone is throwing things at you, and you think, "Oh wow, oh all these people are really on the right path," and then they start like, did you have that thing where people started like trading screenplays, and people would hand you stuff, and you would look at it and go, "Oh my god, this
Oof.
person I thought might become my friend is a complete hack."
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know, it's that thing, that fake it till you make it thing, that I really bought into it. People, certain types of people just, and you know, it comes with the breeding ground of everybody's trying to sell themselves. So they learn how to sell themselves, and they become very convincing and loud and impressive. And you can't help but just start nodding your head until you realize, wait, what the hell are you talking about? You're an idiot. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I don't want to. No, I'll move on. So, at what point in LA did you start making some stuff as well as all the auditioning, or was it just writing at home and?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of never really stopped on the, you know, making little internet videos. And I think, I've made a few friends, actually, funnily enough, from a friend I met in a bar, introduced me to, a few guys, and we made a few short films and just stuff like that. Nothing super huge. And then, I managed to get a lot of work in art department, just doing either set dressing or set deck on short films mostly. And so that sort of paid the bills somewhat and gave me some connections. So I think I started getting random jobs, punching up scripts and
right. So you got some on-set jobs, but then you also got a job like your character in the film, in a way, like getting jobs working on writing for sketchy producers and whatnot.
Yep, absolutely, yeah. The best job that I really liked, that didn't last terribly long, was a friend of mine did like a acting, like a building your reel. Like if you don't have, there's all these companies you can go to. If you don't have any material, you could pay them and they'll set up these things for you to film small scenes and use them for your reel. And so I got to write the scripts for those, and that was a lot of fun, because they would just be like, write a 2-minute cop procedural, or write a thing that is in the style of blank, and you just write whatever comes to mind. But yeah, anyway, just little odd jobs like that. And yeah, a lot of set dressing and set deck and stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And that's getting you on sets. That's the better version of networking, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was all terribly fortuitous, but it did enough, and yeah. And like you said, just working on stuff.
And the reason you just heard an auto crash is because apparently Zoom crashed. I've never had it do that to me before. I've recorded hundreds of things on Zoom, and sure, sometimes it's hard to recover a file, but I've never had something just cut off mid-sentence, and that is what Zoom did. I think Noel and I continued speaking for, probably 30 to 45 minutes. Yeah, it was a totally self-indulgent, super long podcast, and I was going to play the whole thing. There was no way I was going to edit it. And now it just cut off. It's like the fates were against us, Noel. I swear to God, it took us 2 or 3 years to finally get together and record this thing. And then we have a technical motherfucking fuck up that I didn't even know. It didn't show us while we were recording it that this happened. So I've discovered it far too late. And now I will just sign off, I suppose. Firstly, I'm going to thank and apologize to Noel David Taylor. You are the best, sir. And I did an outro for you live. And I even mispronounced your name briefly because I was looking the wrong way. And that is not the reason it cut off. I swear to God, I was going to man up and admit that I got a Noel Joel brain fart while I was signing off. But anyway, if you want to see Noel's amazing film, Man Under Table, go to Arrow, like a bow and arrow, so ARROW -player, PLAYER.com, and just type in Man Under Table, and it will come up, and you can watch it. It looks like, it actually looks very familiar. I think arrow-player.com uses the same platform that High TV uses. And I'm about to explain High TV. But anyway, that's how you see Noel's superb film. It will be a clickable link in the show notes. Also, Noel's social media at avi.mov will be a clickable link, as well as his website, noeldavidtaylor.com. And I will just finish up very quickly. This is the Discover Indie Film Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Noel, for being on it. If you want to learn more about the podcast, go to discoverindiefilm.com or at DIFwins on social media. That was at DIF if I said it too quickly. Please like, subscribe, review, give everything 5 stars. Discover Indie Film gave birth to a TV series on Amazon Prime Video called Discover Indie Film. So please go to Prime Video and enjoy that anthology of wonderful short films from the festival circuit. Just, hey, watch it and review it. Be a nice person. Noel's film, Man Under Table, was at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019. We hold that festival every November, and it's ranked in the top 100 best reviewed. Of the 12,000 festivals in the world, Sherman Oaks Film Festival is in the top 100 best reviewed. So you can learn more if you go to ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. Its sister festival, Film Invasion Los Angeles. Hey, guess what? Film Invasion Los Angeles is also ranked in the top 100 best reviewed in the world out of 12,000 film festivals. So seriously, these are good festivals. You can learn more about that one if you go to filminvasionla.com or it's at filminvasionla on social media. And the last thing, I'd said those words, High TV. High TV is a platform that I initiated. It's wonderful films, indie films. You can learn more if you go to watchhightv.com. That's watch like the thing on your wrist, hitv.com. It is all excellent films that you can enjoy in any state, but High TV is particularly good to watch if you're high. If you're a responsible marijuana user, a responsible drug user, don't abuse it, people. Just don't abuse it. But if you can do drugs without abusing them, High TV is for you. I'm going to say thank you to Noel one last time. Obviously, I'm thanking him way too much in this outro because fuck me. The end of the podcast disappeared. But the next podcast, you'll get to hear Noel answer the 4 questions, which is kind of fun. You'll hear his favorite films, underrated, overrated, and a lesser known people should seek out. I am your host, Jeff Howard, and I thank everyone for listening.